So if you have sensitive ears, maybe if you have sensitive ears and sensitivity, maybe today's episode is something you want to think about before you listen.
Yep, we might get a little graphic.
Graphic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hello and welcome. Oh shit.
Oh
Let's
my
do that
God, we've
again.
already crashed? What?
Let's do that again.
No, I kind of like that as the intro. That was fun. It came out perfect. I think we should continue and put that on there. Like, oh shit, that was great. That was funny.
Okay.
Keep it in there.
Um,
We already warned people. I think it's great.
okay,
It's going
well
to be
we
graphic.
crashed. Hot flashes.
Sweaty.
Irritable.
Mood swings.
Dry vagina.
Cramping.
Night sweats.
Hormonal.
Um, this is actually kind of funny. Um,
Insomnia.
well, you got to take your turn. Insomnia.
Damn.
Yeah. Uh, how do I say this?
Ooh.
Incontinence.
Oh. Latte mess.
Dryness and itching.
Dry, thin paper skin.
Loss of hair.
Sex drive lower.
Weight gain.
Around the middle.
Okay, that's only some of what we're talking about today. And yes, you know what it is.
Especially if you're a woman.
Well, and some
Who's,
some would argue that men would know this as well because, well,
oh,
they'd know of it if the woman in their life speaks of it, which isn't always the case.
so my neighbor up the street, Dave, he's in his early 70s. And it was him actually that caught my hot flashing. And I hadn't really thought about it, but he was so accustomed to his wife having hot flashes. And then he became very observant of other women. So once he saw me having a hot flash, it kind of became this thing where we'd be out in public. Let's say we're out at a restaurant, and he'd look over and say, "Can you tell?" Because he would see that it's like cold outside and there's snow and there's women that are like taking off all these layers or whipping out the fan or and it was really funny that here I am the woman and I had never really observed or paid attention to women having hot flashes, but he sees it all the time. It's funny.
Well, thank God, and seeing it and living it and having compassion for it, hopefully, would be part of that mix as well.
Oh, he was super compassionate. He
Okay.
even bought me a fan, a portable mini fan on batteries that you could charge.
I think a lot of us have those. So yeah, obviously we're talking today about
The M word.
menopause. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So here we go. So we've talked about some of the symptoms, and there's the perimenopause, though. So
Oh,
what's that?
yeah.
What's
I
that
could
from
really
your?
talk about
Yeah,
that.
tell me what you know about perimenopause.
So for me, and this is where the graphics come in. So listeners, if you don't want to hear it, then cover up. But for those of you that want to know what could happen or feel validated that you were not alone,
Yeah, commiserate.
I, as a teacher, it was the most horrible thing. I had to get to the bathroom soon enough because I would have an entire pad soaked, tampon soaked, and it would come rushing out. And it was so fast, I didn't have enough time once to get to the bathroom. And I remained stuck on my black leather chair, thank God, and realized that it was all over. Luckily, I had a sweatshirt. I wrapped it around me. I called the office and said, "Can you cover me?" And I had to go home. And it had happened a number of times, but it hadn't happened in a public venue like that. And I ended up going to the gynecologist, and my options were cauterize the inside, get a hysterectomy, or get myself an IUD. So I really didn't want to mess around with hormones again, but I didn't want to do the operation. And the cauterizing my neighbor had done because she too had had this experience. So I just thought, you know what? I'm going to do a low level IUD. They assured me that the hormones are so ridiculously low. And so here I am now having to use an IUD for the sake of only that. And it was very uncomfortable for quite a while. Like I was cramping, and I think I had been bleeding just minimally for at least 3 months.
Oh God.
And then for years, it had stayed in until my prolapse. There you go. That's menopause on my end for me.
Jeez Louise. You're not the only teacher I know who's had this happen. I
Oh,
mean,
thank
and
you.
I'm thinking there are, obviously every profession you can think of, but I remember a colleague who had something similar happen, and I thought, oh my God,
Wow.
it's like um, it is the amount of bleeding is feels life threatening,
It
and
does. It looks life threatening.
yeah. Um, I've had a number of friends, family member, who've
Oh,
had similar things where it's just massive bleeding inside, and we're not talking,
no, we're
anything
not.
manageable. Because it's so much and it's so fast and it's it is it feels very life threatening. It's very scary
It was really
and
scary.
embarrassing.
Yes. Yes. And it just actually reminded me, and this was interesting. So actually, it was before then. I was still married. I think this was my first perimenopause experience because it was so odd. But that same occurrence happened, and it was when my toddler was in choir. And and what happened was somehow, I don't know, I put up my pants, but something flipped out, or I don't know, but it was all over my backside. And the choir lady, who was maybe in her mid 20s, I had walked into the bathroom and she just kind of looked at me like in disgust. And I had no idea until I looked. And the reason I'm sharing that particular story, as a woman, would you not think that there would be complete and total compassion? That the look of disgust was upon her face instead of, oh my God, let me help you. Do you need a towel or nothing? It was so weird, her reaction. And
Yeah.
so I had to figure out again how to wrap myself with a layer of clothing so I could get out the door.
Well,
But it was like
maybe she was
shaming.
horrified and rather than discuss and didn't know what to do. We could assume, that too. But you're right. Women need to stand up and help each other out, and that's part of why we're doing this. We're having
Yes.
this conversation so that
Yep.
not only women but everyone uh, talks about this, so that we normalize it. It shouldn't be something that's humiliating or embarrassing or so frightening. It should be something that we understand and can react to. So, oh my word. Yeah. Okay. So perimenopause is that time before you actually have menopause. It's when that bleeding can happen. It can go months without it, and then all of a sudden you get some spotting or massive bleeding, like we're talking about. And then we enter into and you have some of those symptoms of menopause, but then you hit menopause is when you've had a year of no period, and then you've considered you're
Mm.
in menopause. Then that's the next phase.
So when you've had zero period for 1 year, that's when you've officially reached menopause.
That's the what the medical uh,
Okay.
community calls it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And see, this is the thing: is how come we don't know about all these things? Then you hit menopause, and then that's when the other symptoms might happen. And this is just like everything else. It's different for every woman. I mean, there's a lot of similarities and things that overlap, but it is different for every woman. I didn't have what you had, thankfully. Having seen up close some friends and family member who had something similar to what you experienced happen, I was just like, oh my God, I very
Hmm.
afraid that this was going to happen. So, but I didn't. I didn't have any of that. My shift was pretty straightforward. I think I meant maybe went a month or two, and I spotted again. And I don't even know if I had that. I just like turned off, and
Wow.
and that was that. And my symptoms have been pretty mild, And I'm just very grateful. To me, it was like the freedom factor came into play. I mean, you spend your whole life, a fourth of your life from the time that you are a woman, um, thinking about, reacting to, planning around your period. And it was such a freedom thing not to have to do that anymore. It was amazing. I'll take hot flashes. I'll take the insomnia. I'll take those things. That's nothing compared to the everyday that, that you experience as a woman. If you're lucky enough to experience that, because if you don't, that would be another situation. So, yeah.
So I just want to make a note. I think that if we're going to teach sex ed in school, I'm sure the word menopause was mentioned, and maybe because you're a teenage self, you're not wanting to listen. But I don't really think there was a unit or anything other than a mention of when your period ends, you're in menopause. I think that we should really go into more detail so that it's not just about that person knowing. It is about maybe then our youth will be more compassionate to elder women and understand what's going on too. Because I think that we do a disservice, and our culture clearly, Sue, doesn't talk much about it, which is why we ended up in this world of menopause with very little information. And just now, you sharing that you knew of multiple people that have had that really bloody experience. Thank God. Like, I wish I had known, because I really felt like it was just me and my next door neighbor.
Yeah, no, it's not horribly uncommon, which shouldn't be so fearful for people. I mean, if you say it's not so uncommon, then it's like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to be so on edge. But how to relate to it, how to react to it, and how to prepare yourself for it. Um, just knowing that it's likely not something you're going to die from. Although I guess
Right. It
then
was a little scary at
yeah.
first. I'm like, God, do I need a blood transfusion?
Yeah, well, and that's no joke, because I mean, to go through that, there's a lot of emotional, and that carries a lot, but just the physicality of that, it again, this is the hard stuff that women go through all their lives, with the cramping and the pain and the physicality of menstruating
Yeah.
and then not menstruating, is real.
And I know this, again, this is another graphic alert, so cover your ears, but I think this is important in talking to one of my daughters about it, because she's like, Mom, I have these horrible clots in the toilet. Am I okay? And at least my daughter felt comfortable to ask. And I said, honey, I have actually bled out the size of a golf ball. And so you're probably fine, because that was okay. And I had asked the doctor at that point. But for those of you listeners who actually have clots, because that's also a very scary thing when you see big chunks in the toilet, you're like, for sure, it's over. Like, I've got cancer or something bad is happening. And again, I went to the gynecologist, and that is normal, but nobody talks about it.
Right.
My mom, either she didn't have the symptoms or didn't want to share or didn't think about sharing. And that's why, again, I say, if we could educate our high school students before they graduate and actually spend a couple days, so that way, when you do stand up in that bus someday and you've got blood all over the seat, the youth will be able to go, oh, she must be experiencing a menopause symptom, instead of like, what the hell is that? Is she dying? Just saying.
Well, and then to be fair, that could happen to any menstruating woman, um, throughout their whole life. Where there's a big clot or whatever, and or you got caught off guard, and you just need to be compassionate with each other and help each other. So yeah.
I just, again, listeners, Sue and I love our
Ugh.
puns. So you got clot off guard.
Oh God. So making a little fun out of it. Okay, I gotcha. The next phase is postmenopausal. After you've been
Mm.
through menopause, then you enter the postmenopausal phase. So it's not over in a day. It's not over in weeks or months, or it could be years and many years, even decades, for this whole transition, perimenopause to postmenopause, to happen.
Okay, I need a clarification before you go into the postmenopause. So a year, no period, menopause.
Well, I meant
So
the
is that like a
symptoms.
like do we celebrate menopause day? And like at that year, because the day after it's been a year, you're then in postmenopause. So really there's only one day of celebration. And I realize we should be celebrating.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of like when you begin your period, some women have the moms do a period party for their daughter, and yeah, it could be the same thing, both ends of it. That would be very a nice wraparound to the cycle
Oh,
of
wraparound.
a wraparound of a cycle of fertility.
Yeah.
Yeah, potential fertility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that idea. But, anyhow, so postmenopausal, you're still experiencing or may experience different symptoms as well, some of the same ones we're talking about. And it just goes on and on. It's quite interesting.
So, in other words, when you're in the postmenopause phase, that's what you're saying. That's why it's even a name, because you still might have insomnia, you still might have
Yeah.
hot flashes,
Yes, you
you
will.
still might have irritability and mood swings.
You will. Well, this is the thing. You think you talk about menopause, and periods and all this stuff, and that was stuff during my generation. It was all very hush
Hmm.
hush and taboo to talk about. If you were lucky enough to have a mother who talked to you about it, pulled you over and sat down and told you what was going to happen, good on you. That was pretty amazing.
Did your mother?
She did. In fact, I remember. I think me too. Have we talked about this already on on the pod?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Tell
well,
me.
I'll tell you. So I remember. I think I was in about fifth grade, and she called me in their bedroom. They had a sofa. It's like no one got to ever go in there and sit on this little tiny sofa. But she called me in and closed the door, and I'm like,
Oh.
okay. I had an idea that this is what was going to be discussed. She had a little pamphlet, a little booklet. I think it was a Dr. Spock, who was the doctor, the family doctor of the time. All the Dr. Spock books. It's not the Star Trek Dr. Spock, live
No,
long and
no. My
prosper.
mom had the Cry It Out Dr. Spock book. Go ahead.
Cry it out. Yes, live long and prosper, which is kind of overlaps. But so we sit down and we would have she pulled it out, just okay, started going through it, and then we read through it together. And then she said, "Do you have any
Oh.
questions?" And I said, "No," because of course I'm not going to ask any questions. And that was that. You
And
know,
this wasn't the sex book. This was just the menstruation.
I believe it was menstruation. I don't,
Wow.
yeah. I remember though, my best friend Lynn Miracle, her mom was a nurse.
That's her name, really?
Yes, yeah,
Oh, that's sweet. Lynn Miracle. I like
yeah.
that.
Her mom was a nurse, and so she had all her nursing books, and we used to pull out her nursing books and look at all the stuff and learn about everything and see the pictures and all that. So I already had a little bit of a heads up before my mom pulled out the Dr. Spock book, so I didn't have questions right away. If I did, I wouldn't have asked her anyhow. Yeah, no, yeah,
So the day I started, it was at a friend's house. It was a slumber party. There were three of us. And I called up my mom and said, "You got to pick me up." And mom, I started my period. And my mom's reaction, but this is my mom, kind of odd anyway. I think it was the denial that I was no longer a kid and oh crap, now I've got a teenager, and really said nothing. I remember getting in the back of the car. I don't know why the back. And we drove and we got some pads, and it was awkward, and maybe I was awkward and my mom was not awkward, but I just remember the awkwardness of it all
hmm
and no real discussion. Like
yeah.
that
The
was it.
practicality of
That
it.
was the
That's it.
hurrah.
Yeah,
So in my mind, so when I had both my girls, I'm like, "Oh my god. Oh my god, what do you want to do?" And my oldest daughter was like not really into the whole party idea. I don't really remember either one of them being kind of excited. I'm like, "Let's celebrate this thing." And it was kind of different. So I went the other extreme of my mom, like, "Let's face this head on and like let's have a party." And I think my girls were actually uncomfortable with the
yeah.
whole concept. Isn't
Well,
that funny?
yeah. Well, I could see that you went from one end of the continuum to the other. Well, not quite the other one end, because the one end is when parents don't tell their kids, and then they think they're dying. But Um,
Oh
you
God,
know,
jeez.
I could see how kids don't want to celebrate it unless it's a whole environment among their friends. Then it's like, yeah, I don't need to tell everybody. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Maybe within our family, I remember for me, it was like letting my daughter take a day off of school. I said, this will be the only day that you take off of school because,
Mm.
yeah. So that was I
Oh,
did
I
do
would have
that.
capitalized on that one had I been your child.
What do you mean?
Oh, I'd be so excited to have the day off.
Well, I mean, on the day of it happened. It was during so I said, okay, you can stay home today, but it'll only be today. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah. And
we
what I'm
spent some
saying is I
time
would have
doing
maximized that day. Like, thank you. Like, darn, should have been my mom.
that. Well, it's like adapt and get used to it because
Right.
it's a
It
big
is.
thing. It's a big, weird thing to have to figure out and do. And I remember back when we were kids, it was like the giant saddles that you sat on, these giant pads, and to even have those were wonderful. But they were like and they had these little like things, ties at the end. You had to tie them to a sanitary napkin belt that you'd wear a belt on. They didn't have that stick in your they didn't have the
I
your
love how you
diaper.
almost said
Yeah, I
diaper.
know. Stick in your underwear kind, and no, it was very uncomfortable, very you couldn't count on not leaking and all that. So it's a horrible time. It's a horrible time to figure that stuff out. And I do though like the sisterhood when you're in the bathroom, a public bathroom, and they say, "Anyone have a tampon?"
Yes.
Or you're like, "Anyone have a pad?" "No, I have a tampon," and and that's another story. Girls figuring out how to put a tampon in. It's not always, it's a tough.
Oh,
That's a
it is
tough.
a thing.
It's a
It's a
thing.
thing.
And can
Getting
you
it up
imagine?
there and
Yeah.
secure and just the whole thing.
Kid
Yeah.
kids are getting them earlier and earlier. So I'm imagining a fourth grader trying to put a tampon in, and or I just yeah.
Do you remember I uh, these situations? I don't know if they happen. I'm sure they did to you too. But where the parents, like, what, I was sixth grade, you were sixth grade, you even did fifth, and I remember parents, every couple of years would say, "Hey, by the way, my daughter just got her period," and really anxious about it. And I love the parents that would let you know. So that way, when you see the horror in the kids' eyes and they're like, "I have to go to the vet," you're like, "Okay, got this." But one of the things that was kind of shocking, and I don't know at your school when you left me, I went to the other school. Just kidding, but not. Uh, there was no sanitary napkin trash can, which meant that every kid had to walk outside of the stall to throw away their
Yeah.
thing. And it was very uncomfortable. And I remember advocating with the principal, could we get one? And nothing was ever done. And I think that that's something we should address. Like, if anybody were to listen, can you please get sanitary napkin boxes inside elementary school bathrooms? Because it really is a horrible thing to
Yeah.
have everything about it is uncomfortable. Or I don't know. I'm just saying, I think we need them in the stalls.
I agree. Yep. I remember have a drawer when we found out about a kid who had her period, I'd have a drawer and I'd say, if you ever need anything, you just go right in
Oh,
here, you take it. And there was a couple of kids I had that didn't have either didn't tell their parent or uh, didn't have the support at home, and so they had no
oh,
supplies, and so we'd have to
oh,
direct them to a staff bathroom where there would be supplies, and that that kid was allowed to go, and they knew they could, and so schools
wow.
do a lot to help out with that, and
They do.
but it needs to be even more where there's that whole cultural acceptance of talking about these things that don't make it so awkward and strange and horrifying. I mean, for a young child, and then on the other end, like you're describing, so many of us thinking, okay, we're dying in the moment of the massive bleeding, and it's both of them are need to be talked about.
So I want to share a little something. When I was in Norway, my my cousin works for IT in a hospital that's being built. And one of the things, they have like all these private contractors that came in, but they were considered a staff because they were going to be contracted for years to get this hospital situated. So they ran a menopause course, and everyone, male, female, no matter what age, had to attend this thing, or you had to view it online at your own time at home. And so we were actually, it was my first week there, and we were watching the expert come in. She was a doctor, and she explained, these are all the symptoms that you might have, and to really work within the business community in making everybody aware, so that way men and women understood better menopause, and to be a little bit more understanding when you see hormones and fluctuations in mood, or instantly needing to go home. I'm thinking it's the bleed out. Um, and isn't it interesting that now they're starting to have more of a movement to educate? And this goes back to, maybe it's good to re-bring it up, but again, if it had been taught well in high school, would we need to, as adults, be sitting in a room? And I also found it interesting that people were paying attention. There were men who were actually engaged, but they didn't realize when they were being photographed or videotaped. And there were two men that were just so, they were probably maybe late 30s, early 40s, so uninterested, probably because they don't have a wife or any experience in this. And they were on their computers the whole time. I just wanted to reach to the screen because it was so dismissive of the situation. And I just had to share that.
Yeah. Well, it's like the like you say, unless you've got a wife, partner, mother, sister. I mean, I don't know if you care about your mother, your sister, until you
You
get your
should.
girlfriend. I know, but until you get your girlfriend, it's not pertinent to you.
Mm,
And this thing of all, men complaining about being on the rag or blaming your attitude or your reaction to something to being on your period. It's just that's yeah, that's despicable. Menopause is one of those relatable topics that make it so easy for people to um, make fun of. I mean, it's an instant relatable topic that people understand. And there's even that Menopause the musical. They made a musical of it. So it's like all this stuff. It's a topic that we talk about, um, and yet we don't know a whole lot about. Like we've been talking, about the
right.
fears and the realities of it. But it is so relatable, and I hope that continues. That there is more comedic discussion, respectful comedic discussion about menopause, about periods for that matter as well. Musicals, why not? Sure, yeah. I have not seen Menopause the musical, but I want to see it at some point.
Actually, you kind of piqued my interest. I'm looking around for my phone because something that occurred to me when you said it, isn't it funny that it's menopause, menstruation? And my question is, what does that prefix actually mean? And isn't it an irony?
It's ironic.
Right?
I believe it has to do with the moon. The
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and the 30-day, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
cycle.
cycle. Yeah.
Ah.
So yeah, but it is. We talk about history, and herstory, hysterectomy. No, okay. Um, Menopause, and yeah, it is a very ironic thing. Yeah. Um, so I just want to conclude with thinking about the freedoms that going through menopause give. It is such an
Mm.
incredible blessing to not have to worry, worry about pregnancy, worry about when you're going to have their period, plan your vacations around things, how it's going to hit, and what activities you can and cannot do in a comfortable manner or one that you're going to thoroughly enjoy. The freedom of not being afraid of fertility. Of if this is all about the fertility. It's about the woman's cycle of childbirth, potential childbirth, and that's what this has all been. But to not have to do that and to have some time to think about yourself, to tune back into yourself. And I think that's a wonderful part of this. And so I would celebrate this with a party, like you said.
Well, I just want to say that, and my oldest daughter, she feels very differently and would probably be more on your side of things. But I went through a grieving at even the thought of going through menopause because it meant that I could no longer have children. And I really, really wanted my children. And I actually, married to the right person, would have had more. So for me, it was actually a grieving of losing the ability to have more children in that stage of my life. So I was sad going into menopause. And now that I'm on this side, though, this is another retirement, there is an absolute freedom. And I think you're right. And I never realized how much space until you started even describing it now. Like, you sometimes wouldn't want to go swimming in the pool, or you wouldn't want to go to the beach, or, tampons are a freedom, but it was still a thing, and if you don't wear tampons, it does limit a lot of things that you could do in the summer, especially.
Yeah.
So freedom. Yeah.
Freedom. Yeah. And, this thing of just even the thought, I mean, I don't know how many women have thought about this, but this idea of your personness. So there's oh, I'm not a woman anymore. Like when
Yeah.
you start your period, oh, now I'm a woman,
Yes.
because it's childhood to womanhood. And now I'm not a woman anymore. I would say no. It's about embracing your personhood, your personness, and
Mm.
defining yourself of who you are as yourself, not in relation to your fertility, to your
Ooh, I
parent,
love
your
that.
child. So,
Excellent.
oh, and tomorrow is International Women's Day. So, shout out to all the women out there, and
Woohoo.
enjoy your one day of this inclusion and equity in our society.
Well said, Sue.
Thanks for listening. Now let's pack up this week's episode in the trunk.
Ride shotgun and be a part of our adventure by clicking on the plus sign to subscribe and follow our show. This will help our ratings and, more importantly, inspire us to keep creating fun and engaging content. We would love to hear from you in the comments sections, or email us at retiredpodcastnewtred@gmail.com. Use the fast track lane by sharing episodes with friends, family, and anyone who would like to join us on a road trip through retirement.
Be sure to check the show notes for links and contact information. Retired is chauffeured by Sue Britz and Tina Lokkbakk. It is produced, directed, and edited by me, Sue Britz. Music and graphics are by me too. Buckle up and tune in next week so that you won't miss your chance to join our retired road trip.